The Cincinnati Bengals are reportedly interested in poaching a division rival center, and we're going to take your questions for the mailbag.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. He's not a post, he's a host. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. If you're new on an audio platform or on YouTube and you like hearing about the Bengals 5 or more days a week, hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button, hit the thumbs up on YouTube if you like what we're doing here. All of that helps us get discovered and build the Locked On Bengals community. And you can find us on Twitter as well. That's where I at least do most of my interacting. James, I think you do too. At Jake Liscow, at James Rapien, at Locked On Bengals. Very easy to find all of those things on Twitter. And James, the Cincinnati Bengals, according to Aaron Wilson, are interested in a center. And whenever we get rumors in late February, there's always the caveat of this might be coming from the agent's camp. This might be coming from Bradley Bozeman. This might be posturing to try to get more money out of the Ravens, who, as we mentioned right before we started recording, James, have their own issues on the offensive line. And Bozeman was not really one of those issues, but the former Alabama center, 6th round pick, according to Aaron Wilson, who is a well-sourced reporter, by the way. He's not some guy who's making stuff up on a fake Twitter account. The Bengals reportedly will be part of the market for his services when free agency opens.
Couple things. First off, you called me post. I'm ready to run a post right now. My legs feel great after the season. I'm rejuvenated. I'm fresh. The combine's next week. Let's roll, baby. That's that Built Bar plan. 2, as far as Bradley Bozeman goes, look, there are going to be guys like this that the Bengals like that we're not talking about. And maybe this is one of them. You're right. Probably coming from Bozeman's side. Certainly it's contract talks and he's a 6th round pick and he's 27 years old. He'll be 28 in November and he wants to get paid. So of course that's probably part of it. But Aaron Wilson's no just guy. Like you said, he works for Pro Football Network now. He worked for the Houston Chronicle for years. I think he still does some stuff for them. And he's been right about a lot of Bengals stuff. So it is interesting. And the reason to me it's interesting is because we're talking about certain names. But honestly, I don't give a damn about any of them, right? I don't care about Laramie Tunsil or this guy or that. I just want it fixed. So whatever names can get it fixed, whatever guys you can put in place to protect Joe Burrow and make this offense as good as it can be, because it wasn't that in 2021, do it. And if they feel like it's Bradley Bozeman, then maybe it is. And I certainly think, and I'm certain you're going to dive into him here, there are some traits that he could add to the Bengals offensive line that would be sort of intriguing.
Yeah, this is the guy that coming out of Alabama, I'm a little bit surprised he got drafted. He wasn't one of the better Alabama offensive linemen to go through that program that has produced a lot of good linemen, at least at the college level, that were very appealing NFL prospects from an athleticism perspective, from a productivity perspective, what have you. Take Alex Leatherwood in this most recent draft class, along with Dickerson as examples, Jonah Williams. I mean, there's a ton of Alabama linemen in the NFL, right, that get drafted highly. Bozeman, a 6th round pick because he weighed under 300 pounds at the combine and tested like a 12th percentile athlete. So didn't run particularly well, didn't move laterally particularly well, didn't jump particularly well, and did all of those things at a below average weight. Very below average weight. Now he's listed at 325. So he's added some weight in the NFL, which is important. And he's gotten better every year in the NFL. So as James holds up a Built Bar for those of you not watching on YouTube, so you know how he's added that weight.
That's
probably
right.
a little bit of offensive lineman diet going on there too, but Built Bar, an important part of any offensive lineman's diet. Anyway, Bozeman is a guy that, to me, was a surprising name to see linked to the Bengals. And I guess I shouldn't really be surprised by any halfway decent offensive lineman that gets linked to the
That's
Bengals
right.
this offseason. But from a scheme fit perspective, the other center free agents that make more sense to me include Ryan Jensen, Ben Jones, who are at the top of the free agent class. Both of those guys a little bit older, but both of those guys more athletic. Even Brian Allen, who is seen as a weak link on the Rams offensive line, another guy that comes from a zone scheme. And then you get to Bradley Bozeman, and this is a guy that's from the Ravens, majored in a gap heavy approach. He apparently was asked to be more of a pooler in 2021 for the Ravens and did a good job of that. But what really stands out, and maybe what the Bengals like here, are two things. One, familiarity with the division, right? He's gone up against the Steelers. He's gone up against DJ Reader and the Bengals. He's gone up against the Browns, who haven't had the best interior. But there's a lot of tape against him in the division. You're directly poaching from a division rival, which, I think matters at least a little bit. You're taking talent away. I don't think that's a primary motivation, but there's probably some strategic relevance there. And his pass blocking productivity by the advanced stats, without going to watch the tape because this happened this afternoon while I was still at work, were pretty good this year. He was second in ESPN's pass block win rate for centers, behind
Oh,
only Creed Humphrey, tied with the Browns' J.C. Treader, better than the Patriots' David Andrews and Chargers' Corey Linsley, who are guys that we talked about last offseason before they were signed either back with the Patriots or with the Chargers. So some accomplishments there for him in pass blocking, which seems to be the better part of his game. And he also just had his best season. So, there's a concern there when you have your best season at 27 in a contract year. At the same time, the Bengals just did this right last year. And these are some of the same doubts we had about Trey Hendrickson having his best year in a contract year and kind of having a bit of a late breakout. But with Hendrickson, there's since been some really good work done. I think it was Ben Solak from the Ringer who went back and said, you know what? The Trey Hendrickson breakout actually was 2 years before he came to the Bengals. And then he got more playing time, and that productivity maintained with increased playing time. So if the Bengals get it right again and they've identified a guy that's actually just ascending and getting better and is overcoming his athletic limitations at the NFL level, and is a guy that's going to pass protect and handle stunts well on the inside, well, all of that sounds great. The zone running game be damned. And you figure out your running game based on what you have. And as we wanted last year, James, your first and foremost priority is to protect Joe Burrow in this passing game.
yeah, and it's not just this year, next year, the year after. There's two Joes on offense. The one's much more important than the other. Sorry, Joe Mixon. We've seen you behind a bad offensive line still get 1,000. Imagine if this passing game was opened up and there was the great wall in front of Joe Burrow, literally. So I like the idea. Look, this center and I looked it up on PFF. He gave up 3 sacks total, according to Pro Football Focus. I'll take it. And I know that's just a small thing, but if he's going to win a lot, that's what you need, because this is going to be a pass first offense. You don't have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins under contract for the next probably 5 to 7 years minimum for any of those guys, and not pass the ball a lot. And that's what puts fear in opposing defenses. Seriously, handing the ball off to Joe Mixon, right? Or Joe Burrow dropping back the pass and having time to operate and go read 1, read 2, read 3, read 4. He's got so many weapons, including Mixon. So if there is a priority, it does have to be that. And then the other part of it is just Burrow's overall health, right? I'm tired of watching him limp. So how do we fix that? Well, you fix that by adding guys who can pass protect. And if Bozeman can do that, sign me up. I agree with you. The 27-year-old, he's just had his best year. What is it? Well, part of it could be 6th-round pick, had to add weight, threw a bunch of Built Bars in that belly, and he finally got there. So, he might be about to reach his prime, like a lot of guys that the Bengals have spent money on the past couple of years. And just thinking about it, if they find a way to protect Burrow, like I get it. It might not be the perfect fit from a run perspective. Figure it out then. And they're eyeing a bunch of centers, ladies and gentlemen. It's not just Bradley Bozeman, but it would not shock me at all if they're interested.
He would fit the budget. He's young. He might be getting better. And so there are
Mhm.
reasons to think this could make sense, but it's also like we're 2 weeks away from free agency. So we'll see. whole lot of we'll see. That remains true at this time of year. And well, we'll see what questions are in the mailbag. We're going to dive into your questions about the Bengals offseason approach and more coming up next.
But first, I have to tell you about betonline.net because football is over. Free agency's right around the corner. But the NBA is in full swing, college hoops are in full swing, and betonline.net is your number one spot to wager on all of your favorite sports. And it isn't just basketball. They have UFC, they have boxing, they have everything in one stop. It's a one-stop shop. So go there now because you're going to get player props, you're going to get everything you're looking for, plus the latest news. And their interface, super simple, super easy to use. You can use it on your mobile device and sign up there just by going to betonline.net or check it out on your laptop or PC right now. Betonline.net and check out all the trends, all the action, all the latest odds and props. I've used them. You should too. Betonline.net, where the game starts.
James, it's time for the off-season weekly mailbag. As we will throughout the off-season, we'll take
Yeah,
your
baby.
questions on Thursdays and we'll get them
It's my
recorded
first
and
one, Jake. It's my first
answer. Oh,
one. You
yeah.
had it last week. I'm excited.
I did it
Mailbag
all by
time, baby.
myself. It was very popular. Maybe you want to just,
Yeah. Here, I'll turn the camera off.
I'll
You,
see
you
you later.
guys, you guys are stuck with Jake.
The first question we have today comes from Oof at J12Nation _ on Twitter. And he asks, after the Bengals extend Jesse Bates and get some offensive line help, is the biggest need at corner or at tight end? And is it more realistic to address that in free agency or the draft? James, come on back and answer Oof at J12Nation _ question.
For those not watching on YouTube, I turned my camera off and I muted myself for a bit. I tried to really lean into disappearing and I wanted to make Jake nervous. So I was here the whole time and I was ready to answer the question. Okay. So to me, of the two, which one's more important? Well, it's not even close, right? It's cornerback. And what I think the Bengals are going to try to do is keep CJ Uzama, but they are going to probably spend at corner. And that doesn't mean they don't draft one, but you have Cheeto under contract for 2 more years, and it's a great deal. You have Mike Hilton under contract for 3 more years, and it's a market deal. You have money after you cut Trey Waynes to throw at another veteran corner, given how much they prioritize the position. And that doesn't mean they couldn't keep Eli Apple in a $1 million, $2 million type deal if he's not trying to break the bank. But I do think they try to go out and get a CB1A, right? Another outside corner. And then in the draft, if there's still a top corner and it's BPA, then you can, take them at 31 or wherever. But no, I think the plan is realistically Uzama and then a corner in that mid-level starting tier that could be ascending. Who knows? Like, I don't think they're going to throw 20 million at JC Jackson, for those wondering. I know Mike Hilton flirted with him and it's fun. I don't think that's realistic. Never say never, right? I'm never going to do that. I just don't think that that's a realistic option.
Yeah, I could see them taking another Chidobe Awuzie size swing at the free agent market. But coming into this year, there were 2 years left on Trey Wayne's deal, and I think the Bengals were expecting Trey Waynes to be a starter for them this year and prove that he should be a starter for them next year. That didn't
Mm-hmm.
happen. He got hurt. He
Mm-hmm.
couldn't get on the field when he was healthy because ostensibly because he was hurt, and they decided they liked Eli Apple. Now, do they run back Eli Apple? I would like to think not as a primary option. Maybe Eli Apple is a Bengal again
Right.
next year, but is he for what are you for?
He could be CB4.
Right.
Like, you can't
Yeah.
run it back as him as a starting corner, but can he be? Do I feel comfortable with him as the 4th corner on the roster? Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good 4th corner.
And that's how he started the year. And I think that that's probably more where they're comfortable. But is it going to be another $15 million deal like they gave Trey Waynes? I don't think so. I think they feel like they've got really good value in Awuzie and in Hilton. You mentioned market value for Hilton. You're probably not too far off. That's probably true. He's getting $6 million a year. And I know it's a slot corner. Those guys aren't worth as much as your guys that play outside or can move around like Cheeto, like Jalen Ramsey. But I think they have a pretty good deal there, all things considered. I mean, his cap number for 2020 is still just $5 million.
Mhm.
So, you really like Mike Hilton's deal, in my opinion. And so I think they're looking at it and saying, okay, Chidobe Awuzie has a seven million or so dollar cap hit in 2022. He's only under contract for 2 more years. So either there's potentially an extension coming for Cheeto at some point. That'd probably be after next year if they like the way he plays next year, or they need somebody who can be in that spot and start opposite and maybe take it over in the futures, take over that CB1 spot. So for me, it wouldn't surprise me if the right guy is there at 31 that they draft a guy and sign a guy. But
Mhm.
I think that I was a little surprised that you said it's corner and it's not close because I think I agree with you that it's corner because of just how important that position is. But I do think tight end is really important for this offense. I think that when they don't have that guy in the middle of the field for the third down stuff, which is where they use Uzama a lot, or to threaten, the Y leak stuff or the seams, the few times they had time to run those concepts and throw them, I think that takes something away from this team. It takes away part of their ability to attack the middle of the field because when you have a tight end and Tyler Boyd to do that, I think it makes you more dangerous. And so I think it is still pretty important that they find somebody that is better than Drew Sample as a receiver at tight end, whether it's Uzama or an external guy. I don't think it'll be a draft pick. We've said many times, it takes most tight ends who I guess aren't Kyle Pitts time to adapt to the NFL. So even if they get Trey McBride in the second round, who's the consensus number one tight end in this class, you can't count on him in year one. So
Mhm.
one of these many tight ends, I think they'll have to get in on as well. But I do think it's fair to say that corner, just mostly because of positional value and how you can just get picked on if you don't have a guy, is more important than tight end.
Well, I just think that's how they feel. Like,
Okay.
I don't think the organization is good. I would sign Rob Gronkowski. I want Gronk in the red zone and for the playoffs with Uzama, or I want David Njoku, or you know what I mean? Like, there's a ton of tight ends out there. So sure. I love the idea of that, right? And giving Joe like 52 weapons to throw to. And I'm drafting a receiver too, but people aren't ready for that yet. But I just think that they're going to prioritize corner because the past 15
Yeah.
years says it, right? And
They
so
they got a
that's the
DB's
part of
coach,
it.
a defensive coordinator, and they historically value corner very highly.
Yeah, so that's where I lean, and especially if they get a deal done with Uzama. If they
Yeah.
don't, then yeah, I mean, I think they're going to prioritize getting someone because it can't
The
be Drew Sample.
No, they will bring in a tight end, whether it's Uzama or an external free agent. Drew Sample will not be tight end one next year. And if
I
he
would
is,
be.
then we'll come back to this podcast on February 24th, 25th, and make fun of ourselves.
Let's keep things rolling with the mailbag. Aaron J asks, "Am I wrong in thinking that Isaiah Prince is a good swing tackle? I felt like he did a good job starting late in the year."
Oh man. I mean, like he's fine, I guess, as a swing tackle. He might be the Bengals swing tackle next year, unless it's Deontay Smith, assuming that he gets more chances at tackle. Maybe it's Jackson Carman. Maybe he gets back in the mix at tackle. But when he faces high quality edge players, he's toast. We saw it against Max Crosby. We saw it against Von Miller. We saw it throughout the season against, average edge players. I think he's okay, but he's I wouldn't want to rely on him for more than like a handful of snaps in a year. He was fine
Mhm.
as an extra tackle, but injuries happen on the offensive line frequently. Jonah Williams goes down. Say they have Riley Reef back, hypothetically, and now your left tackle is Isaiah Prince, or maybe your left tackle is Reef and he's back at right tackle, Isaiah Prince. Those don't really make me feel all that comfortable, especially if you're pushing to get back to the Super Bowl and win it
Mhm.
and you have injury. Yeah, I don't know. Am I content with Isaiah Prince? Probably not. Am I throwing a fit if Isaiah Prince is your backup tackle again? Also, probably not, but that depends a lot as well on like guys like Deontay Smith and Jackson Carman competing and battling and getting a little bit better and being in that mix as well.
I don't think Carmen. I think it's going to be Akeem Adeniji. Like, I think he's done at guard. I think
Do
that's
do
it. And
any of
they
these make you feel good though?
no, and so that's the point. I'm fine with them on the roster, but they need to find another something. And there's going to be someone in we'll dive into Riley Reef because we have a question about him. But yeah, I think you need one more and more proven. Again, I want proof. Some of these guys should develop under Frank Pollock. I need proven guys. And that's why going back to the start, right? Bradley Bozeman, he's pretty proven as a pass protector. I need to have that. And then if Trey Hopkins is the backup or he moves to guard and then he's your backup center, now you feel pretty good about it. As you know, so there's a lot there. I don't know if they can make that work money-wise, but we'll continue with the mailbag next. First, I have to tell you about how Bradley Bozeman gained all that weight, man, and he got in great shape. And it's Built Bar. And so whether you're trying to cut and get all chiseled like Jake Liscow, or you're trying to put on the LBs like Bradley Bozeman, Built Bar can help you get there because they're low in calories, high in protein, high in taste. Okay. They have 100% chocolate, every single bar. And so they taste amazing. They taste like a candy bar. And so whether it's this blueberry muffin one that I have right here, whether it's this special edition caramel almond delight, whether it is Jake Liscow's go-to, what was it? Coconut brownie chunk, right? The coconut brownie. Those are really good, by the way. It doesn't matter. You can't go wrong with Built Bar. So check them out right now at built.com. Use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. Bradley Bozeman's doing it. I'm doing it. Jake's doing it. You should too at built.com, promo code LOCK15.
James, you mentioned we had a question about Riley Reef. Let's jump around a little bit and we can combine some questions here. Christina
Yep.
at
Yep.
K Hong 05. Sorry if I don't know if that Y is silent, Christina. So apologies if it's not. She would like to know why there's so much talk about upgrading a tackle when the tackles were the best part of the Bengals offensive line for much of the year. The pressure up the middle caused a lot of problems, she writes, and wants to know why not keep Jonah and Reef
Mm-hmm.
and even Prince is at swing tackle, as we just discussed, and build up the interior offensive line. And James, going back to something you said right before the break, if they want to build up that interior offensive line, you mentioned Trey Hopkins potentially as a backup. I think the only way Trey Hopkins is a backup on this team next year is if he's cut and re-signed. I don't think it'll be
Yeah.
at his current number. But to answer Christina's question, James, and I'm going to ask you again, why not just leave the tackles alone, bring back Reef, and focus most of your attention on that interior O line?
If you do that, then you absolutely have to upgrade at swing tackle. Like that's the thing. And I agree. Like on the surface, Jonah, left tackle, he's shown he could stay healthy and be competent. Riley Reef, when he was in there, certainly competent. They left him on an island, still a guy that, and I think they can re-sign him. I think it's realistic. You can get him at a decent number coming off the injury, given his age, all of those things. And so, two things. One, I think the focus on tackle is because this organization has not prioritized the interior. They just haven't. Outside of drafting Billy Price in the first round, when's the last they prioritized extending Trey Hopkins? Well, yeah, it was because they whiffed on Price and they needed something at center. It was bad, right? And there's nothing wrong with Hopkins. He's okay. But they haven't really invested in the interior. They need to do that this offseason. And that's, I think, where Christina's thinking. That's where her mindset is at. And that's what I hope they're thinking. And if they do that and they invest in proven bodies, if you're telling me that your starting tackles week 1 of 2022 are Jonah Williams and Riley Reef, I'm okay with that. But you can't be one Riley Reef injury or one Jonah Williams injury away from Isaiah Prince, because then everything just, everything levels down and it gets much tougher, and he could improve and some of these other guys could improve, but I want proven commodities. So just go find maybe not a Riley Reef tier, but a tier below that can be a swing tackle veteran. And it is doable and it is possible. And I don't have a list in front of me, but they certainly could. And so that's part of it. Or, maybe they draft a guy, but we're not really trusting them in the draft. So I agree. Throw a lot of assets at the interior, and maybe it's both guard spots and they leave Hopkins at center. Not against that by any stretch. But if you're rolling with Reef and Williams, I need a better backup just in case one of those guys get dinged up.
And part of this with the offensive line, and we've kind of like scoffed at this idea, but you really do hope that one of these guys, one
You're
of
hoping.
these young draft picks gets better. And you hope that the 4 guys that they've acquired in the last 2 years, one of them can be a starter. It's possible that none are. It's possible that 2 are, 3 are, but hopefully it's at least one. Because
It,
if you have to get free agents for all of that stuff and you have to start signing veterans to be backups and like, you know, I don't know, the AJ Cans of the world to like $3 million 1-year deals just to try to have depth. Like that doesn't feel very good either. And then you're starting to lock up. It's death by a thousand paper cuts on the salary cap when you start doing a bunch of 1-year deals just to get by.
yeah, it's such a big offseason for Jackson Carman because he has a lot of, I mean, it's no secret, right? Work ethic issues. Will he make football his first priority? Will he stop worrying about all the other interests that are out there? You know, that, I mean, that has to happen. You know, they
Yeah.
like his physical tools. He had red flags coming out, and it sucks if that pick doesn't hit. Like if he's not, you know, he's going to battle for a starting job next year. They're going to try to, you know, give him that, but he's got to earn that damn thing.
Yeah.
And
So does Deontay Smith.
sure, and that's the thing is like there's a path where Deontay Smith is better than Jackson Carman and might be an opening day starter next year, but they're going to have to earn it. And I really, from Hopkins on down, you know, I think that all these guys, you know, it should be kind of a toss up, and Jonah Williams too. I mean, if here's the thing, Christine, like if they bring in a left tackle and they re-sign Riley Reif, well, then Jonah Williams could play on the interior, and I'm pretty confident he would be an upgrade. I really am. So there's a lot of options, and I don't think the Bengals would necessarily do that, but I'm not saying that they wouldn't do that either.
Speaking of Jonah Williams moving inside, I mistakenly said that he played some guard at Alabama. It was a handful of snaps. It was never a full game, even. I think the most guard snaps he had in a game was 9. So he's been a tackle for his entire
Sure.
career. So there is that. And moving positions isn't as easy as Andrew Whitworth makes it look. But let's move on. We're going to package some questions here, James. Matt Boatman, the last boat in on Twitter, wants to know, after a season like this, do you think it will be easier to attract big time free agents to Cincinnati? Meanwhile, David W. at Stonebender 1388 asks, how will the Bengals playing games with Jesse Bates impact potential free agents? He brings up a Tony Saragusa example where Mike Brown wouldn't pay for a first-class plane ticket, and many of you might remember Warren Sapp when the Bengals pulled the offer at the last minute. And so we have two sides here of the same question. The Bengals playing games, quote unquote, with Jesse Bates, and the Joe Burrow and Super Bowl run effect on free agency appeal.
I don't think Jesse Bates's negotiations impact current free agents at all, unless they have David Moletta, you know, and again, I butcher his last name every time, but Jesse Bates' agent, unless they have the same agent, I don't think it's going to be an issue. And it probably won't anyways, right? Because as an agent, you have to prioritize and, you know, compartmentalize because every situation is different. I mean, the Bengals have paid free agents. They've been able to get them. So I really don't think that's an issue. Now, could it affect morale with these draft and develop type guys? You know, the Joe Burrow, Jesse Bates falls under that, but Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt's of the world. Jermaine Pratt, by the way, extension eligible this offseason. Yeah, it can impact morale that way. And so that part of it, but I don't think it's going to impact outside free agents. As far as do outside free agents want to play after that year? If I'm a cornerback, you go there and you have success. If they want you, like think about how many free agent flops there are every year. Well, the Bengals, outside of Trey Waynes, who quite frankly, from day one, never showed a true interest in Cincinnati, seemed like he just took that. And I'm speculating a little bit, but not really. If you listen to him on the podcast in April 2020, it never felt like he wanted to be in Cincinnati. I never questioned DJ Reader, right? Even though he got injured and we didn't see a lot of him, it seemed like, I mean, his emotional speech after week 2, after the loss to the Browns on Thursday Night Football in 2020, you could just feel it that he cared. And so, you know, as long as you avoid the Trey Wayneses of the world where they just kind of, and I know he had injuries, but it just seemed like he was shrugging it off a little bit. You know, I think that you can hit on him. And if you're a free agent and you see that, it's like, all right, that's a place I can go and I can be a plug-in next to these other veteran corners, or I can be a plug-in to block for Joe Burrow. So, yeah, I mean, I think they are a destination for the first time in a long time where it's like, sign me up. And that's the fun part about Mike Hilton recruiting, is because that's a guy that came from Pittsburgh. and he was in that organization. And now he's in Cincinnati after 1 year and he's like, hey, let's go, let's go, let's go. And that means behind the scenes that players like what has been built in Cincinnati and are trying to get other guys. And when Joe Burrow's at quarterback, that's pretty exciting. So I think they're as appealing as they've been in my lifetime from a free agent standpoint and attracting free agents to Cincinnati.
At least in quite a while. And a big part of that, so like the quarterback thing is, so I think Burrow is more appealing to other people than Carson Palmer, but Carson Palmer after 2005, ACL or not, was probably pretty appealing to external free agents because in 2005 we thought Carson Palmer was probably the third best quarterback in the NFL. He never had the Burrow it factor, but I think Burrow is a big factor. This team also went to the Super Bowl, and I think that matters when they're as young as they are. People look at Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon, this defense, and they say, okay, they're close. I think that players could look at that and think they're close. And so, like you said, if you're an offensive lineman, who do you want to block for this year? Joe Burrow is a pretty good answer.
Mhm.
I think, what teams are offensive line needy in the biggest way, it's going to make the biggest difference. I think that's part of it. The other part of it is the money part of it. And the Bengals the last 2 years, as we said in a show earlier this week, spent $35 million against the cap in the first year of free agent spending on external free agents. And that's not an insignificant number. The other thing that I learned today, Nick Cordy and Andre Perota in my mentions going back and forth about the Bengals situation, is that the Bengals are currently, for cash commitments, not cap commitments, but cash commitments, the lowest projected spending team in 2022 right now. That number is going to go way up. The Bengals typically, according to Andre, and Andre is the resident Bengals cap and cash spend expert, typically spend around the cap, which this year is what, 213 or so million dollars. They spend around the cap in cash every year, which means that the Bengals in cash spend are due to spend about $100 million in the next month on extensions,
Mhm.
on external signings, on re-signings. They're due to spend about $100 million. And some of that might be, we talked about guys like, Von Bell, or maybe they get aggressive and get ahead of it with Chidobe Awuzie. Maybe they extend Jermaine Pratt. Maybe they, I don't know. I don't know who else it would be, actually.
Sure.
Jonah
No, but
Williams. I don't know. But you get
yeah,
the
it could
idea.
be Jonah.
There's a lot of money to spend here. And with TV revenue coming in, and with all the season tickets they've sold and all the jerseys they've sold, and the money that's come in from this playoff run, maybe the organization is ready to spend a little bit more. And maybe they're ready to do some of these restructures to free up cap space so they can spend a little bit more. So they can spend that $100 million or $90 million or $80 million or whatever it is this offseason to improve the team. And if they're willing to do that, and they're willing to put the money up front, then they can do the guaranteed money that these high quality players want. Guaranteed money matters a lot. It has gotten in the Bengals' way in the past. And I think that's another piece of it, is the Bengals are positioned to spend the money if they choose to do so. If they say, we've got 2 more years on Joe Burrow's rookie deal and we want to spend money to maximize that window, they can do it. And it's just a question of whether they will at this point, or if they'll continue to operate as they have in the past. And we're going to learn a lot about the direction Katie Blackburn, if she has taken over as Buckeye Dad 1167 asked, as the team president in de facto nature, which, James, you're shaking your head. She hasn't, but she is doing a lot of contracts herself. Um,
Well, sure. That's
you know,
yeah, she controls all the contracts, but
if that's the direction that they're going financially, I guess is what I'm saying, then we might start to see that trend establish itself over a 3-year period here based on what they do this year.
yeah, I mean, he still signs off on the everything. So nothing crosses, everything goes past his desk. But sure, she negotiates all the deals along with Duke Tobin, who's obviously in play with that. But all right,
Was
last thing, real quick. Go ahead.
Yeah. Wasn't there a story about like Marvin Lewis and Katie Blackburn signing a guy after Mike Brown went home and he got in the next day and found out that they had offered a contract or something like that? I feel like I read that story in the last couple weeks.
Maybe, and that probably didn't go well for Marvin, huh?
I think it was early in his time in Cincinnati.
Oh,
I don't remember
ok
who it was, but
that definitely didn't go well then,
no,
because that's
I imagine not.
oh my god. Anyways, real quick, Shoe Dog 9 asks, "What's more likely, the Bengals sign a new guard or Jake benches more than James on combine day?" I had
Well,
to squeeze that one in.
you might not know from looking at me, but I can actually bench 7,000 pounds. So, uh, turns out I got that Spidey strength, James.
So, Shoe, to answer your question, Jake would kick my ass in the bench press, and the Bengals aren't signing any guards. Sorry for everyone that wanted them to. It's
No,
Jackson Carman and Deontay Smith season.
not even close. James could bench probably 3 times what I can bench at least.
That might be it depends on how much you can bench. If it's just the bar, then yeah.
I would hope you could bench 3 times the bar the way you
I could
work out.
do yeah, I'd probably be close to 3 bills. So,
Yeah,
if
that's like
you're at 100 pounds, then yeah, we could
I
get
could
close.
do a little bit more than 100, but I haven't benched in a long time. So, it'd be close to
Well,
3 times.
you have until Sunday, when we record again to bench, and we'll revisit this then
Yeah, I'll find a gym.
and some
That's
milk
going to
bars.
do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Ending on a fun note there. We're back next week. The combine, right? That's next week. James is
Yeah, it's
nodding his
next
head.
week. It's next week, and I'm gonna be there.
Mike Brown
Ooh.
and Duke, not Mike Brown, Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor will
Yep.
address the media. We'll hopefully have some clips or snippets from those press conferences to talk about at the very least for the podcast. And that'll be coming up next week, as well as all the great action from the combine free agency shortly thereafter. And maybe we'll get more free agency rumors as well, as it seems to be rumor season. Until next time, Bengals fans, hoo day and have a good one.